Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak podcast. Good morning. It's Friday, the 10th of October. I'm Caroline Hepker in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, Israel's government approves a ceasefire plan with Hamas that will release Palestinian prisoners and Israeli hostages held in Gaza, bringing a landmark peace agreement closer to reality.
France prepares for its sixth Prime Minister in 2 years as political factions jockey for position in a fractious landscape.
Plus, the return of the bean counters. Staff at the US Bureau of Labour Statistics are recalled, despite the government shutdown, to prepare September's inflation report.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Israel's ministers have signed off on the first stage of the US ceasefire plan, setting up a release of Hamas's hostages within 48 hours. The plan will see aid into Gaza ramped up and Israel's troops begin to withdraw from the Strip. Crowds gathered to celebrate in Tel Aviv and across Gaza, with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the breakthrough was down to US involvement.
We're at a momentous development in the last 2 years. We fought during these 2 years to achieve our war aims. And the central one of these war aims is to return the hostages, all of the hostages, the living and the dead. And we're about to achieve that goal.
Despite both Netanyahu's cabinet and Hamas's chief negotiator having agreed to the deal, challenges remain. The war has reduced Gaza to rubble, left tens of thousands dead and destabilised the Middle East. Officials have privately told Bloomberg the long-term parts of the peace deal will be far harder to achieve, with major hurdles in rebuilding Gaza and preventing further violence.
Now, Donald Trump has hailed his own role in bringing about what he called peace in the Middle East as the US president continues to lobby for a Nobel Peace Prize. Trump says that he will travel to Israel for the release of the hostages in the coming days. The US is also sending 200 troops to the region to monitor the deal. Trump has been arguing that his achievements deserve a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, I don't know. Look, I made 7 deals and now it's 8. Solved the wars, one going for 31 years, one going 34 years, one going 35 years, one going 10 years. I made 7 deals. This would be number 8.
But President Trump is unlikely to win the annual award, which is announced today. Members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee have hinted the White House's campaign has been futile. Some observers have worried there may be a diplomatic and economic fallout for Norway should the independent 5-member Nobel Committee not choose him.
France's President Emmanuel Macron is expected to pick a new Prime Minister by this evening, following the resignation of Sébastien Lecornu on Monday. In the meantime, the country's business leaders have been jockeying for influence with key political players who are likely to wield power in the coming months. Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo has more.
France's business elite are courting socialist leader Olivier Faure, who has been tipped as a potential prime minister. Bloomberg understands that the politician dined with the country's most powerful business lobby on Wednesday, ahead of Macron's nomination announcement expected today. During the gathering, he reportedly told industry leaders that another snap election would destabilise the economy more than any policy measures backed by the socialists, including pausing Macron's controversial pension reform. Although Faure's chances of becoming premier are slim, his party became kingmakers after last year's surprise elections. His group are now essential to form a government that doesn't include the far right. In London, Tiwa Adebayo, Bloomberg Radio.
The US Treasury is purchasing the Argentine peso to shore up its value after weeks of sharp declines. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a social media post that Washington has finalised a $20 billion currency swap line with Argentina's central bank. This is Eugene Ludwig, a former supervisor of national banks operating in the US, commenting on the rare intervention in currency markets.
Well, you know, it's an important country. It's much larger and richer than most people understand. So making sure that this stays stable, as well as the currency markets generally, is a sensible move. But as I say, this is a very hard area.
Eugene Ludwig, former controller of the currency, speaking to Bloomberg TV there. The Trump administration is launching a financial rescue for a political ally, Argentinian President Javier Milei, ahead of upcoming midterm elections on the 26th of October. Milei welcomed the move and thanked Besant in a post on X as Argentina's markets rallied on the announcement.
Bloomberg has learned that the US Bureau of Labour Statistics is bringing back staff to finish September's inflation report. The data, which was originally due next week, is used to determine the cost of living adjustment for Social Security recipients. The White House Budget Office has ordered the agency to recall employees to complete the Consumer Price Index in time for release by the end of the month. The BLS had previously suspended all operations during the government shutdown. The last time a shutdown delayed the CPI release was in 2013, when the report was pushed back by 2 weeks.
New York's Attorney General Letitia James has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Virginia, the second of President Trump's perceived political enemies to be criminally charged in 2 weeks. James was charged with 1 count of alleged bank fraud and 1 count of making false statements to financial institutions in relation to a mortgage application. She says the charges are baseless and that the president's goal is, quote, political retribution at any cost. Speaking to Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix, Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, has warned of, in his words, civil war brewing in the US.
We're in wars, okay? There is a financial money war, there's a technology war, there's geopolitical wars, and there are more military wars. And so we have a civil war of some sort, which is developing in the United States and elsewhere, where there are irreconcilable differences.
That was Ray Dalio speaking on Leaders with Francine Lacroix.
And the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has hailed deeper trade ties with India on the final day of his visit to the country. Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, said his country and the UK had, quote, shown the world the way on global trade, as he raised over 5,000 posters in Mumbai celebrating the deal they signed in July. Starmer touted $1.7 billion of investments by Indian companies in sectors such as education, defence and technology, which he said would create almost 7,000 jobs in the UK. He reaffirmed Britain's support for India to join it with a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, as he appeared willing to overlook points of disagreement such as India's purchases of Russian oil.
Those are our top stories for you this morning. In terms of the market, so largely a sell-off in Asia. MSCI Asia Pacific Index is down by almost 0.8% after what has been a blistering rally in global stocks. In terms of stock futures, US Stocks 50 futures this morning are currently down 0.1%. The dollar is also lower, 0.2. The euro trading at 1.1575. Looking at 10-year Treasury yields right now, those are down a basis point at 4.12. Those are the markets.
In a moment, we'll bring you more on what to expect in France as we're looking ahead to the announcement of the next Prime Minister later today. But first, we want to bring you to the Middle East. Israel's government approving that ceasefire deal with Hamas that will include releasing thousands of Palestinian prisoners in exchange for any remaining hostages in Gaza. Our head of Middle East and North Africa coverage, Stuart Livingston-Wallace, joins us now for more. Stuart, thanks for being with us. Where are we now in implementing this ceasefire deal, and what are the next hurdles that need to be overcome?
Good morning. So, it all seems to be going reasonably smoothly. It went to the Israeli cabinet last night, was approved. So we're now in a sort of a 24-hour initial phase where the IDF, that is the Israeli army, will start withdrawing from its current positions to sort of a pre-agreed line. They will still be inside Gaza, but it's going to be over a significantly smaller amount of territory. At that stage, you then have a 72-hour period where the hostages, both those still alive and those dead, are hopefully going to be brought out of Gaza and back into Israel, and as you said, simultaneously a release of Palestinian prisoners presumably into Gaza. So basically we're looking at the next 4 days. It's going to unfold, and again, this is very much phase one. And then in terms of the next hurdles, I think there's a long way to go. And we should be under no illusion about how difficult some of those questions are, notably on the question of the complete disarmament of Hamas, the future governance of the Gaza Strip, and perhaps most importantly, the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip.
What do we know about the US's commitment to overseeing the deal, also militarily overseeing the commitment to the deal?
I mean, certainly in terms of overseeing the deal from a sort of political and logistical perspective, the suggestion is that Trump would head this committee that would sort of keep an eye on things and direct traffic, as it were. In terms of the military commitment, I mean, we did have a statement from CENTCOM, that is the bit of the Department of Defense that looks after the Middle East as well as Central Asia and South Asia. They said they're going to have 200 people on the ground in the Middle East without specifying exactly where they will be. Now, CENTCOM has a forward base in Qatar, a rather large one, so I suppose it's conceivable they're going to do it from there. But I don't think anyone should interpret that as a commitment for US troops on the ground, particularly in Gaza, and they were very clear they had no intention of having troops stationed inside Gaza.
Stuart, our Big Take report today looks at what's next in Gaza, feeding the population, reconstruction and governance. I mean, how big a challenge is ahead for Gaza's future?
I mean, enormous. I think arguably it's going to be one of the biggest engineering challenges of modern times, just because of the scale of destruction and the amount of ordnance that has been dropped on Gaza. You know, the just clearing the rubble and making it safe so that you can start building again is going to take an awful long time. And, you know, we've had lots of guesstimates out there. I'm not sure how accurate any of them could possibly be, given that, you know, there's so few people that have actually gone and seen what's there. But we did have a reporter inside southern Gaza yesterday, and, you know, he certainly reported back that it's exactly what you would expect, or what you've seen on the photos, that it is very wide-scale destruction. So it's going to take a long time, it's going to take a lot of money, and it's not clear at this stage quite where that funding is going to come from, or indeed who is going to carry out the work. But, you know, what you can say on a more positive side is that there is clearly a great deal of goodwill to make progress here and to try and ameliorate the situation.
Stuart, thank you so much for being with us this morning as we continue to follow all of the details as they emerge from the Middle East. That is Stuart Livingston-Wallace, Bloomberg's head of Middle East and North Africa coverage. Thank you. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this.
Now, in France, we'll find out later today who will be the country's next Prime Minister. That person will need to build a consensus around a budget on an accelerated timetable after Sébastien Lecornu resigned from the job on Monday. Richard Bravo, who leads our team covering government and economics in Western Europe, joins us now for more. Rich, you and I have been in Paris all week covering this story. Are we any closer this Friday morning to knowing who President Macron might pick?
You know, I don't think we're any closer to knowing exactly who he will pick to be the next prime minister, but the important thing to focus on is the fact that he's naming a prime minister at all. Earlier this week, it was increasingly looking like Macron would call another snap election. That would have meant even more political chaos and financial instability. So even though it's not clear who exactly Macron could name, and the list is very long and it does run the political gamut, most see this as the least bad option. So we're really looking forward to seeing who he picks, which we're expecting to find out later this evening.
Well, Bloomberg's been writing about how business leaders have been courting the Socialist Party leader, Olivier Faure. How important is he, do you think, to what happens next?
Well, in order to understand the political dynamics at work here, you have to look back to last summer's European elections when the far right made historic gains in France. And that led Macron to call a snap election in France, because he thought that a new election might reinforce his centrist coalition. Unfortunately, the opposite thing happened, and the far right made even more gains, and it fragmented the National Assembly. That effectively made the socialist kingmakers in parliament for anyone trying to form a workable government. So, in effect, Olivier Faure isn't an incredibly important individual in the grand scheme of things. It's just that he leads a party that is necessary for anyone trying to form a centrist government in France at this moment.
So, Rich, we've taken back out our Guess Who boards to try and decide who might be the next Prime Minister of France. But when we do find out, how long will this next Prime Minister have to make progress before the spectre of snap elections comes back?
Well, that's a really important question. And the new Prime Minister is going to have to act very quickly. So looking at the timetable, a new cabinet will have to be named almost immediately. And if they want to pass a budget through the normal process, that will have to be proposed on Monday. So that's not a lot of time to choose a cabinet and get a very complicated budget together. And that budget will need to be passed by the end of the year. So we expect to see things move very quickly, and there really is no guarantee of success in any of this, whether it's naming a cabinet or getting a budget together.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.